Today I am going to expose Stephen Miller and show why many critics are calling him one of the biggest hypocrites in politics. There are a few things that seems granted in life, death, Texas, and the fact that Stephen Miller will appears on television. Really shootings after any major politics event. It actually took several days after the strike on Iran before he appeared on television again. But once he did, the reaction was extremely what people expected. The reasons this movement is important is because Miller is no contradicting statements he's made during the election campaigns. Back then, the report repeatedly claimed that if Democrats won, figures like Lois Cheney would push the United States into major global wars. He warned voters that their children could be sent to fight in conflict across the Middle East, Russia, and Asia.
Where's Jesse and the American people to know that there's never in history been a more total asymmetric one-sided annihilation of the enemy than you are witnessing that is unfolding right now in Iran. Iran has long been feared by all the nations of the Middle East. It's long been believed to be one of the great military powers of the region, and yet the United States, under President Trump's leadership, has annihilated their navy, has annihilated their missile capabilities, has dealt devastating strikes to the IRGC and their command structure, has taken out, in collaboration and coordination with Israel, their nation's sinister leadership and command structure. It has been a complete wipeout.
Okay, those comments are opponent because critics say they completely contradict the warning Miller made during the election. At that time, he urged that Democrats would lead the country into a major world conflict. No, however, he is celebrating military escalating. Another issue being raised is the sharp increase in anti-Muslims rhetoric coming from some right-wing figures. Social media reactions surrounding Ramadans have included calls for droppers, deportations, and attack on Muslim communities. Critics argue that this type of rhetoric show how politics messaging during elections can change dramatically, and one power is secured.
By every definition, an unprecedented military success against a regime that since 1979 has exported nothing but bloodshed and violence and claimed countless American lives.
I question Steve.
Okay, however, many analytics dispute that claim. They argue that the Iranian government has not collapsed, and that the structure of the regions remain intact. One reason in the scale of the Iranian revolting God crops, often called the IRGC. The organization include holders and hundreds of thousands of member and operators as one of the central pillars of the Iranian state. Because of that structure, experts say it is unrealistic to describe the entire system as annihilated. Critics also say Miller's exaggerate the danger posted by the Iran, while at the same time minimizing the strength the region still hold. Another contradictions emerged when Trump administration officials discussed whether Iran posed a direct threat to the United States. At one point, a statement from the White House press teams suggested that report of an Iranian attack threats were based on unverified information, and that there was no confirmed dangers to the American homelands. Their statement directly conflict with arguments made by officials like Miller's, who described Iran as an immediate threat requiring
and oil
military
prices go
action.
to 100. What does the president feel about that? Like, what is his posture there?
Well, it underscores above all else, Jesse, how this was the last chance that the United States had to take action against a regime that was planning and plotting to kill Americans and that had the ability to strangle, if it wished, global commerce in the future, backed by long-range missiles, backed by nuclear weapons. So just again, as a thought experiment, imagine if this regime that right now, weaker than ever before, imagine if that regime instead had nuclear weapons, instead had long-range missiles that could reach an American city, instead was rich with cash. Remember, Obama put them on a path to enrich them with tens of billions of dollars and have a nuclear weapon right now.
Okay, but candidate questions what evidence support calling the operations a success war are usually measured through strategic outcomes, financial cost, and human consequence. In this case, the conflict has already resulted in. Casualties, wounded soldiers, and large numbers of civilian deaths. At the same time, military operations in the Middle East over the past 2 decades have added enormous cost to the United States national debt. Some analytics argues that repeating similar strategies could depend those financial and political challenges. Another important part of the debates involved the Iranian nuclear agreements, known as the JCPOA. The deals placed a limit on Iran nuclear enrichment and allowed international inspectors to monitor the program when the agreement was abundant. Critics say the restrictions disappeared and Iran eventually resumed Iranians and enrichment without the same levels of oversight. No, some observers argues that current tensions are partly the result of that decisions.
Well,
You asked earlier as well
yeah.
about the future of the regime, because I didn't want to leave that question hanging. The president's been clear on this point too, Jesse. The people of Iran have an opportunity if they choose
Trump has not been clear on this point, by the way. Trump has not been clear on anything.
to, Jesse. The people of Iran have an opportunity if they choose to take it, their last best chance to claim control of the future.
Okay, that statement suggested that in internal political change in Iran could happen soon, but critics argued that the reality inside the country is far more complicated. The Iranian government tightly controls information and restricts internet access and suppresses politics oppositions. Many citizens are focused on basis survivals rather than organization political movement in coverage by foreign leaders. And the situation show how quickly politics messaging can shift during elections. Leaders warn about war and foreign threats after election. The same leaders may support military actions. They want criticized that contradictions is why many observers see the debate around Iran, Frisian policy, and war deserves closer security.